Now, last week, I was a panellist on Patrick Christie's show. We were discussing Carol Vorderman and her online spat with Johnny Mercer. Now, it was a very balanced discussion, but this is what was clipped and went viral.
Piled in by her. And look, on one hand, she's got all that stuff, you know, she's a serious political commentator, and then if you look at her Instagram, it's all pictures of her bums and her boobs. So what is it? What is it here? She can't be both.
Yeah, OK. So from that, Shaun has been piled on. Now, unfortunately, the clip wasn't long enough, so it didn't show the very end of that, because that's the bit I actually wanted to show. But he's been called racist names and lots of things that I can't say on air, alongside the usual threats. So now, let me play you the clip in context, but sit back, because it's a few minutes, but I thought I'd best play you the full version.
Should we care about Carol?
I don't care what Carol has to say. The only beef I had with Carol was when she worked for the BBC, that she shouldn't be being political, and she was very political. She told Boris to just go now. I think she called him... She was disgusted by the Prime Minister. She kept tweeting out all this vile bilge towards the members of the Tory party, and I just think that was unacceptable working for the BBC. But now she's left, she can say whatever she likes. I think it's a bit rich that she should be complaining that she's getting backlash, because I think it was actually her that started the whole stuff with Johnny Mercer anyway, and then she's complaining that his wife is sending her messages or something, tweeting stuff to her or whatever. It's just like, if you step into that area and start criticising people in that way, then don't be surprised if it comes back at you.
Shaun, was Johnny Mercer right to hit back in the way that he did? I mean, he absolutely went to town, so she has a... well, rubbish life, and that she's mad and things like that.
You've got to look at the history here. She basically piled in on Johnny, piled in on him and his wife. So he's a human being. At some point, he said, you know what, I've had enough of this. And also, she was factually incorrect. And if you look at her Twitter feed, you'd have to see she probably knew she was and just wanted to start a fight and point at Johnny again. And the one thing I know about Johnny Mercer, he deeply cares about what he is doing. He actually believes in it. You can be cynical about politics and ministers and the like, but he believes in this, and I think you just saw a man who thought, I'm not having that, because I've come to politics to help homeless veterans and I'm trying my best.
Just before I go to Amy, I think it's important to have a bit of context on this. So Johnny Mercer has been talking about ending rough sleeping amongst our veterans community, which I know is an issue that, frankly, well, I think everyone in the country should really care about. Veterans, people who fought for this country, should not be sleeping rough on the streets. There is a technicality, isn't there, between giving someone a permanent house and taking them off the street and putting them into some kind of sheltered accommodation. And that's kind of where the controversy was lying in this, Shaun, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And look, when his Labour opposition replied, all you've got to remember, there's a political bias, there's a political need, you know, and that person is responding through their political lens. Because if they were really concerned, if they really thought Rishi should get rid of him, where were they when, I don't know, Dawn Butler did what she did, or I don't know, any of Labour, but where were they when it happened? If they're really outraged about the interplay between the public and MPs, they should be outraged for everyone, not just when it's Conservative.
Amy, your views on this. Does Carol have a place in the political discourse, do you think?
I think if there was a poll right now, Johnny Mercer versus Carol Vorderman, Carol Vorderman would absolutely trounce him, because she's incredibly popular at the moment. And I think that's because she just knows when something stinks. Like, she's bringing the Tories the receipt.
She's got more followers on Twitter, that's all it is.
It's because our national broadcaster supported her for years.
The reason I think I respect her at the moment is because you've got those pictures of her with David Cameron, and she's very open. She used to vote Conservative. She was a Tory, and she is sick of what the party has become, which I think is a position that a lot of Conservative voters can relate to.
I would relate to it, but we won't go speaking in that way.
I would have some sympathy for that if she conducted herself like a grown-up. She doesn't. She organises pile-ins. Two of us sat on this sofa have been piled in on her, piled in by her. And look, on one hand, she's got all that stuff, you know, she's a serious political commentator, and then if you look at her Instagram, it's all pictures of her bums and her boobs. So what is it? What is it here? She can't be both. And at the end of the day, if you're going to do what she did, right, make sure you do it factually. And I will say, I'm with Nana. Once she was not working for the BBC, and I think the BBC did the right thing by asking her to consider her position, right? She can say what she wants to say.
You know what, though? I think without her, we wouldn't have seen Michelle Mone in the position she is now. It was her.
So that's the full context. He said that you cannot be a serious political commentator while showing your bum and boobs. His point was people won't take you seriously and that in his view you cannot be both. He did not say you cannot have beauty and brains, because that's what's been going out. In my view, this is not misogyny, which is a hate of women, because firstly, Shaun doesn't hate women, and secondly, can you imagine if Rishi Sunak or Sir Keir Starmer were to post overtly sexual pictures on Instagram, squatting on exercise machines and showing off any bulges, then trying to create serious policy? So it's not really sexist because it applies to men as well. You probably wouldn't take them seriously as politicians if they did this, which is why most politicians and political figures don't have Instagram. And we're constantly telling our kids to be careful what they post on social media, as it may affect their future career. We warn young people of the pitfalls of things like OnlyFans and how it can affect your future prospects. But at no point did Shaun say you cannot have beauty and brains, because there is no doubt that Carol has both. But they're all at it. On LBC this morning, Paul Brown's guest was slagging off GB News and calling on Ofcom to deal with us.
We've got election debates coming. We've got new broadcasters on the scene since the last election, GB News, for example. So how do you think this is going to play out in broadcasting terms? What do you think some of the interesting things might be?
Well, I do think the big issue is how does Ofcom, the broadcasting regulator, handle GB News? And I've been saying for years now that Ofcom haven't been tough enough on GB News, and that GB News is frankly a right-wing propaganda channel. Even though I appear on it from time to time as a pundit.
Well, there's no balance or pushback. There was a bit more, but there was no balance or pushback. So if anybody should be brought up to Ofcom, actually, it should be you on that channel right there, because, frankly, you should be saying GB News are not here to defend themselves, or you know, how about that? But because a lot of these people, we've been slagged off by, you know, the whole issue was talked about on ITV as well, the whole issue with Shaun Bailey, and there was no one to say GB News is not here to defend themselves, or we've reached out to Shaun Bailey and so on and so forth, which is what should happen. And you know why? It's because they believe they hold the moral high ground. The way they feel they can disrespect and disregard us, branding our entire channel right-wing because we dare to speak up. We can all list things that someone has said in the past that may have been acceptable or then but is no longer acceptable now, or where people have made a mistake. I mean, even Carol will be guilty of that one. But this particular clip that went viral from GB News has been taken out of context with the intention to destroy, and it's wrong, Carol, and you know that. In the Evening Standard, Carol said that he's a coward, referring to Shaun. You see, misogynist is just a fancy noun for someone who bullies women, and all bullies, as we know, are ultimately cowards. That's what she said. But Shaun talked about pylons and that this is exactly what is happening to him. But Carol, seriously, pot, kettle, you're a bully. But I'm ready for the pylon, so bring it on.